All right, now we're going to take a look at Sweet Child of Mine. So I'll play the first intro riff and then we'll break it down. All right, you've heard that one before, haven't you? So one thing I think is important is to play with the rhythm pickup on the guitar here. So I have my switch here to the front pickup. That's part of that warm sound that Slash gets on this riff. Now the idea is we're outlining something that works with a D major chord, and the first note that we're going to play is D. That's on the 12th fret of the D string. And then we're going to go to the 15th fret of the B string, which is also a D. The next two notes we're going to play are on the 14th fret to the 12th fret of the G string. And then I'm going to play the octave G here on the 15th fret of the high E string. And then I'm going to jump down to the 14th fret of the G, and then play the 14th fret of the high E, back to the 14th fret of the G string. So here's what we've done so far. Okay, one more time. And then we're going to play that same 8-note riff again. So if we put those two phrases together, here's what we've done. Tons of fun. Okay, the next chord of the song is a C chord. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the exact same riff, but we're going to start now on the note E, which is part of a C chord, and we're going to play everything else will be the same. So we're going to start off on the 14th fret of the D string now, and then the other notes will be exactly the same. Okay, moving along. The next chord in the song is a G chord. So what we're going to do is play the exact same riff, but we're going to start on the note G, which can be found on the 12th fret of the G string. So we're going to start there, and everything else will be the same. And then the next chord in the song is a D chord. So we're going to go back to the very first riff that started on the 12th fret of the D string. Okay, so here's one entire round. Here's what we've done so far. Okay, so the guitar starts off the song with that round one time, then the bass and the drums come in, and we play that same round again. The third time we're playing with a full beat. The whole band is grooving together now. And the difference at the end of this riff now, the final two measures will be a little bit different. Here's what the final two measures sound like. Okay, so let's go over these final two measures, which also work over a D chord. We're going to start off on the 12th fret of the high E string, and then we're going to go to the 14th fret of the G string. We're going to revolve around that 14th fret of the G string. So after those first two notes, the next note will be played on the 15th fret of the B string, back to 14G, 12 on the high E, back to 14G, up to 14 on the high E, back to 14G. Here's what we've done so far. Once again. Okay, moving along, we're going to play 15 on the high E, back to 14 G, 14 high E, 14 on the G, 12 on the high E now, 14 on the G, 15 B, 14 on the G, and then while holding that 14 G, we're going to play the 15th fret of the B string. So it's okay if those two notes ring together. Okay, so here's the final two measures. All right, so let me play the final round with those new measures that we just learned. And there's the intro for Sweet Child of Mine. All right, so now let's take a look at the verse for Sweet Child of Mine. There's two guitars going on here, as in many of Guns N' Roses songs. They have two different parts for each section of the song. So the basic part will be just simply a D chord, and often we can add the sus to it, which is just taking a D shape, adding the 3rd fret on the high E string with your 4th finger there. And usually when you add that sus, you're going to take it off pretty quickly. That's going to be played for 2 measures. We'll have the D with the D sus for 2 measures. So the first phrase could be something like this: D, add the sus, take it off, and then pick maybe the B string to the high E string. It's a little bit different each time it's played throughout the song. So as long as you come up with a good groove, it's going to sound great. So we have that D and the D sus for the first 2 measures. The next chord is C. And then with this C chord, we're going to add the note D on the 3rd fret of the B string. This makes the chord a C add 9 chord. And we can do that same little trick where we take our 4th finger, add that D note, and then pull off. After we do the pull off from the 3rd fret to the 1st fret on the B string, I'm going to play the G string and then come back to the B string. Again. The next chord is G, and the G chord is also played for 2 measures. And then we go back to the D chord for 2 measures. So it's 2 measures of D, 2 measures of C, 2 measures of G, back to 2 measures of D. And then those 8 measures start all over again. So the basic chord structure could sound something like this. Okay, so there's also a second guitar part on top of this, which is outlining the same chords, but it's going to be a little busier here. We're going to start off with a D up here on the 10th position here. It's like the top part of a D bar chord. So I'm playing on frets 12 on the D, 11 on the G, and then 10 on the B and the E string. We're just going to simply hold that for a measure and let it go for another measure, because we have 2 measures of D. And then we're going to move down to C. And with this C, I'm going to do this trick where I'm going to play it with the 4th finger on the 10th fret of the E string, and then pull off back to the 8th fret. And then I'm going to play the B string, which is being played on the 8th fret now. So far we've done this. Now we're going to go down to a G chord. And I'm going to do a little bit of picking with the G chord. After strumming the G, I'm going to back pick the top 3 strings twice. Now we're going to play a D chord. Add the 4th finger here, so it's D sus. You never stay there long. Pull it off. Back to the B string, and then hit the top of the chord. Okay, so that takes us through 1 round. Okay, the next round is going to be a little busier, so why don't I play through it and then we'll break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're outlining the same chord shapes, but we're going to do a little picking from each of these chords. So here's what's happening. Starting off with a D chord shape, we're going to pick the D string to the B string, back to the G. And now I'm not going to play on the high E string. Now I'm going to lift off my middle finger and play that high E string open. So far we've done this. Now back pick to the B to the G string. Now we're going to add the middle finger back on the high E string on the 2nd fret. So we've played a complete D chord now. So far we've done this. Now come back and pick the B and the G string. Now we're going to play a little run here on the high E string. We're going to play it on the 2nd fret, 3rd fret, back to the 2nd fret, open. So far we've done this. And now we're going to play the B string on the 3rd fret, so that note is D. So here's what we've done so far. Now we're moving on to the next chord, which will be played like this. Okay, it's going to be a C add 9 chord. I'm going to play it with a 3, 4. Okay, so this starts off with this D shape. I'm going to play the open D string and then play the B back to the G string. Hit the top part of the D chord. And now the G string, 2nd fret. Do the sus. The D sus is where you add your 4th finger on the 3rd fret. So I'm going to play that sus and then pull off with my 4th finger. And then play the B string and then just back pick the top part of a D chord. So it all sounds like this. All right, so let's play the entire guitar part now for the picking pattern. All right, so it starts off actually without the picking pattern. We're going to play these chords up starting at the 10th fret. All right, so here's the entire 2nd guitar part. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very nice. All right, so if you made it this far, you're ready for the chorus. All right, so the chorus for this song also has 2 guitar parts. The basic part is simply playing an A chord to a C chord to a D chord. And we're going to talk more about this guitar part later on, but right now we're going to take a look at the part that Slash is playing, which is almost like a lead guitar part that works over these chords. We're starting off with a phrase that sounds like this. Once again, I'm going to the rhythm pickup on my guitar to get that warm sound. I'm going to play on the 11th fret of the D string. That note is C sharp, which is part of an A major chord. Then I'm just going to play on the 14th fret on the B and the G and the D strings. Coming up to the 15th fret of the B. So far we've done this. Back to 14 on the G string, 14 on the B, back to 14 G. Once again. Now the next chord in the song is C, so we're going to do something that works with that C, and it sounds like this. So it's going to be C, which is on the 10th fret of the D string, the octave C, 13 on the B, and then 12 to 10 on the G, 12 on the high E, 12 on the G, 10 on the high E, back to 12 on the G. Once again. The next part of the song just goes to D chord. And for the D chord, we're simply going to play the first riff that we learned in the intro. So if we put all this together, starting from that A shape, here's what we've done. Okay, we play the A shape one more time. Then down to the C shape. And now, once we get to the end of that C shape, we've ended on the 12th fret of the G string. We simply slide up to the 14th fret of the G string, and then grab the 15th fret of the B. Okay, so that's the only difference here. To end the phrase, we simply slide from 12 to 14 on the G, and then grab the B on the 15th fret. All right, so here's the whole lead guitar part for the chorus, Slash's part. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and... All right, so now we're going to take a look at the first small solo in this song. The solos get longer as we go along. So here's the first one. I'll play it and then we'll break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this solo is being played over the verse pattern, which is D to C to G. The scale that works over those three chords would be D mixolydian, which is one of the modes from G major. So if you want to check out some scale information, you can check out the scales section of this DVD. Okay, but now we're going to start going through it. The first phrase is simply playing on the B string 10, 8, 7, and we'll do that 2 times. And then we play 10, 8 on the B to 9 on the G 2 times. Now we're going to follow that with 10 to 8 on the B. Pre-bend on the 10th fret of the B, up a full step, and then we're going to come down from that bend. Play the 8 on the B, bend back up on the 10 of the B, up a full step. Grab 10 on the high E, bend 10 on the high E up a full step, come back down, and then bend on the G string 9th fret up a full step. Okay, so that last little phrase from the first little pre-bend is Okay, so let's play that whole first solo now. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. All right, so we just learned the first solo. So coming out of the first small solo, we're back into another verse, the second verse now, and then we'll be into the second chorus, and those are the exact same as the first verse and the first chorus. So there's nothing new to learn there. Now we're going to be into the second solo, which is a little bit longer here, okay? So we'll break this down into sections. The first section sounds like this. Okay, so we start off with the same phrase that we did in the first solo. On the B string, we're going to play 10, 8, 7 2 times. And then we're going to play 10 to 8 on the B to 9 on the G 2 times. And then we're going to play 10 to 8 on the B. So far, it's identical to the first solo. Now we're going to repeat 10 to 8 on the B, so this is something new. And then we're going to play on the 7th fret of the B string and bend up a half step and come back down. And then we're going to catch the 7th fret on the G string now. That can be a tough little phrase because you want to try and pivot with your first finger to get both of those strings. And then we're going to play the 7th fret of the B string again, bend that up a half step, and then grab the 10th fret of the E string with your 4th finger, back to the B string and release that bend. Okay, so that whole phrase sounds like this. Okay, here's the next phrase. Okay, so what's happening here is we go back to the B string, 10 to 8, to 7, play 10, 8, 7 again. Now we're going to slide into the 12th fret on the B, play the 10th fret on the high E 2 times, 13 on the B, now up to the 15th fret of the B, bend that up, hit it again, and again, come back down, now slide into the 13th fret. So here's what you just learned. Okay, the next phrase sounds like this. That's simply playing a half step bend from the 12th fret of the B string up and back down, 12 on the G, 12 on the D. Next phrase. So what I'm doing here is I'm bending on the 14th fret of the G string. This will be a pre-bend. I'm going to bend that note up before I strike it. Come back down, 12th fret of the G, slide up from 14 to 16 on the G, play 15 on the B, bend up a full step with the middle finger, come back down. Now I'm going to play on the 17th fret of the B string, bend up a full step. After I've done the bend, I'm going to grab the 17th fret of the high E with my 4th finger. And then play the B string again. And let those two notes ring together. Okay, so let's go back and put this whole solo together. Here's what we've done. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so coming out of that second solo, now we're going to be into the third chorus. Now the third chorus does not have that little lead guitar part on top of the basic chords. So here are the basic chords now. We're going to play an A power chord, simply the open A along with the second fret of the D and G. And I play the chord, and then I just kind of lift off a little bit so I can get this scratch effect. To a C power chord. This is played on the A string 3rd fret, 5th fret of the D and G. Move that up a full step and there's a D power chord. Okay, so those 3 chords together sound like this. Now with the D we're going to have this single note riff. So starting off on the high E string on the 2nd fret, I'm going to bend up a half step and back down. 3rd fret of the B string. 2nd fret of the G string, pull off to the open G. And then on the D string, 4, 2, and open. So put all that together, it sounds like this. So in context with the A, C, and D power chords, it sounds like this. Back to the power chords, A, C, and D. And this time we play quarter note triplets on the D chord, so it's going to sound like this. Okay, now we're back into the A, C, and D. And we're going to play this riff again. Then we're going to play A, C, and D again. And this time when we get to the D, we're going to just build up slowly on the D. And then we're going to play an E flat chord on the way to the 3rd solo. All right, so let's play the entire chorus now. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we're coming out of the 3rd chorus. Now we'll be into the 3rd solo. This solo is quite long. We're going to break this up into 2 big parts. There's going to be the mellow first half of the solo, and then there's going to be the part where the band builds up and the wah-wah comes in and goes crazy. And that'll be the second part of the solo we'll learn. So this switches over to E minor. We'll take a look at the first part of the solo here. And think about the E minor scale. We're going to go to the rhythm pickup on the guitar. Starting off on the 17th fret, I'm going to bend up a full step. Come down and grab the 15th fret of the high E. Now 14, 15, back to 14, we'll do a hammer-on and pull off, and then slide back to the 12th fret of the high E string. So this sounds, together it sounds like this. One more time. Next phrase sounds like this. Okay, so I'm playing on the 15th fret of the high E, and then hammer on and pull off 14, 15, 14. And now I'm going to play 12 to 11 on the same high E string. And I'm going to end the phrase by going back 12, 14 on the high E. Now, something that's interesting here is the 11th fret of the high E string. That note is D sharp. When we have an E minor scale and we play D sharp instead of D, that scale is known as the harmonic minor scale. So once again, check out the scale section of the DVD to check out the harmonic minor scale. But that's what's going on with that one note right there. So if we put those two phrases together, here's what we've done so far. Okay, the next part's going to sound like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pre-bend where I bend on the 15th fret of the B string before striking the note. So I bend up and then strike the note. Come down, 12 on the B. Pre-bend 14 G, come back down. 12 on the G. 11, 12 on the G now. 14 on the D string. Okay, so that phrase once again. Next phrase sounds like this. So I'm playing 11, 12, 14 on the G, 13, 12 on the B. And then I'm going to do a pull-off from 13 to 12 on the B, come back to 14 on the G. Let's go back a little bit and put all this together. Okay, next phrase. I'm going to bend on the 13th fret of the B string with my middle finger up a full step. Come back down, play 12 on the B 2 times. Next phrase. This is going to be a bend on the 12th fret of the B, up a half step and back down. 14 on the G. Now I'm going to grab the 15 on the high E, bend up a full step and back. Okay, let's go back and put it all together now. The next phrase sounds like this. So it's actually the same thing twice. I'm bending up a half step from the 11th fret of the G string, coming back down, playing the 9th fret of the same string 2 times. I'm going to do that phrase twice. Next phrase, I move down to the 8th fret of the G string, bend up a half step and come back. Then play the 11th fret on the G string. So here's what we've done so far with this new section here from the 11th fret of the G string. Okay, after that 8th fret, we go to the 11th fret on the G, bend up 11th fret on the G, up a half step, come back down, and then we're going to land on 9 on the G. Now we're going to go to the D string on the 9th fret, and we're going to have this phrase. So this is going to be a bend on the 9th fret of the D string, up a half step and back down. Grab 10 on the D, and then slide into 9 on the G. Okay, so let's go back a little bit and put this in context. Okay, now we're back to the 11th fret on the G. We're going to bend up a half step and back down. Now 9 on the G. 8 G, up a half step, back down. Okay, coming to the end here. Hang in there. 11th fret on the G. And to end it, we're simply going to bend up a full step from the 9th fret of the G. So I'm going to use my first finger here, bend up a full step and back down. Okay, so let me play the whole second half and then we'll go back and put the whole solo together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now one thing to note, when we're holding that final note, the second guitar solo starts, so it's an overdub, okay? But let's go back now and put this entire solo together from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the next part of the solo is where the wah-wah kicks in. It goes on for quite a while, so we're going to try and break this down into bite-sized pieces here. So the first little piece will simply be this. Okay, that's it for now. We're starting off with a little phrase from the harmonic minor scale. So 13 to 14 on the D, and then we're going to do a hammer-on and pull-off between the 11th fret and the 12th fret of the G. Now we're going to play 14 D, 11, 14 G. Okay, there's our first little piece. Next little piece. This is going to be on the 12th fret of the B string, 13 to 12, 16 to 12. And what note is that on the 16th fret of the B string? D sharp. We're still with that harmonic minor. Okay, so far we've done this. Next phrase. So we're going to play 13 to 16 on the B, 12, 14 on the E, 16 B, 12 on the E. From the beginning now. Now we're going to slide 14 to 15 on the E, 12, 14 on the E. Now we're going to play 15, 14, 12 on the E, 15 B, 14 E, 15 B. Here's what we've done so far. Okay, next phrase, we're going to play a hammer-on and pull off from 12, 14 back to 12 on the high E string, 15 on the B, 12 on the high E. Now we're going to bend up on the 15th fret of the B string, come back down and go to 12 on the same B string. Okay, so far here's what we've done from the beginning. Okay, next phrase. We're going to bend up 2 times on the 15th fret of the B string. Now we're going to bend up again, come back down and go to 12 on the B, 14 on the G, and then repeat that phrase. So here's one of the phrases. And if we play that 2 times, it sounds like this. Now we're going to go to the 17th fret of the B string, and it's a similar phrase. It's kind of like an answer to that first phrase. So we're playing on the 17th fret of the B string, bend up 2 times. Now, on the CD, something pretty cool happens. I don't know if it's an accident or not, but he gets this effect where it sounds like 2 strings being played at the same time. So I think he's bending on the 17th fret of the B string 3 times. But on the 3rd time, if you can, you kind of push the G string and the B string together to create this chaotic effect. So if we do that on the 3rd bend, we get something like this. If you get it, that's cool. I think it's a nice sound. If you don't get it, just bend that 17th fret of the B string 3 times. Okay? Continuing on, we're going to bend the 17th of the B another time, so there will actually be 4 bends on the 17th fret of the B. 15 on the high E, 17 on the B, bend. Now we're going to bend up and come back down to 15 on the B, 17 on the B. Next phrase. Bend 15 on the B, 12 on the high E, come back 15 to 12 on the B. Next phrase sounds like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm bending on the 14th fret of the G string, up a full step and come back down to 12 on the G, and then back to 14 on the G string. And I'm going to go back and forth between the 12th and the 14th fret of the G string a few times. So we have the bend, 12, 14, 12 to 14 again, 12 to 14 again. You can give it a slight push there. 12 to 14 one more time. Now this time when I play 12 to 14, I'm going to bend the 14, and I'm going to have my 4th finger on the 15th fret of the B and on the high E string. And I'm going to go back and forth between that. So I'm going to bend on the G, and then I'm going to strike the B string and the E string. So sometimes I get both of those top 2 strings together, and sometimes you just get the B string in there. But we do that phrase 4 times. Okay, so I'd say it's a good idea now to go back and see if we can put together what we've done so far. All right, so from the top. All right, so far so good. Moving right along. Next phrase sounds like this. So what I do is I bend on the 14th fret of the G string, up a full step, come back down, go to the 12 on the G string, 14 D, 14, 12 on the G. So far we've done this. Now I'm going to play 2 scratches on the D string. So I play with the right hand 2 times, but I don't hear any notes coming out. It just kind of helps get in the groove. It's a nice effect. 12 now on the G. Give it a slight push. Now 14, 12, 14 on the D. 2 scratches. 12, 14, 12 on the G as a hammer on and pull off. 14 on the D. Now we go back to 12 on the G. 14, 12, 14 on the D. 2 scratches. And then 12, 14, 12 on the G. 14 on the D. Okay, so let's go back and put all that together. So here's the new stuff that we've just learned. Okay, the next phrase sounds like this. Okay, so we're doing a lot of notes where we play one note 2 times, all right? So, first we're going to start with this phrase. 12th fret of the G 2 times, and then 14, 12 on the D. 14 of the G 2 times, back to 12 to the G. 14 to the G. So far we've done this. B string, 12 2 times. 14 to 12 on the G. 15 on the B string 2 times. Pull off to 12, so it'll be now 14 on the G. So here's what we've done so far. Once again. Moving on to the high E string, play the 12th fret twice. 15 to 12 on the B. 15 on the high E 2 times, pull off to 12. 15 on the B. Now 15, 14 on the high E. And then hammer on and pull off 12, 15, 12 on the high E. Okay, so here's that whole phrase now. One more time. All right, moving along. Here's what the next phrase sounds like. Okay, so this is a repetitive lick. Starting on the 15th fret of the B string, bend up a full step, play 12 on the high E, come down 15 to 12 on the B. So far we've done this. Now we're going to start the phrase on the 14th fret of the G with a full step bend. 12 on the high E, 15 to 12 on the B. Okay, so the whole phrase is this. And we do that 4 times. You repeat that same phrase 4 times. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we end this phrase by bending on the 15th fret of the high E string up a step and a half. So you just kind of go for it. We're trying to bend up from G up to B flat. As long as you give it a good push, you should get there. I always support a bend. If I'm bending with my 3rd finger, I always have my middle finger behind for extra strength. Okay, we're going to come back down to the 15th fret of the E string, 12, 15, 12 of the E, 15 B, 12 E, so Next phrase, bend 15 of the B up a full step, 12 on the high E, 15 to 12 on the B. So that phrase sounds like this. Okay, if we go back to where we had that step and a half bend. Now we're going to bend up on the 14th fret of the G, up a full step, come back down to the 12th fret of the G. Bend 14 of the G, up a full step. Grab 15 on the B. Bend up 14 again on the G string, up a full step, back down to 12. 14 of the D. Now we're going to play 14, 12 on the G with a pull off. 14 of the D string, and then finally ending 12 on the G. Okay, so that whole last run sounds like this. So I'm going to go back and try and put all of that second half of the solo together. Here we go. And that's it. All right, so coming out of that big main solo, we're into a breakdown section. The chords for the breakdown are E, these are all power chords, E, G, A, C, and then a quick D, G. So it sounds like this. Okay, does that quite a few times, and there's some little guitar fills in there while that's going on. So you can just make some noises by scratching. Slash is using the wah-wah when he does that scratch. So you scratch, you just place your left hand over the string so that you have no chord. So when you hit the strings, it just sounds like this. One fill that's kind of cool is this, where he plays E minor pentatonic, starting on the 7th fret of the D. We play 7 to 5 on the D, then the A, then the E string. Slide down to G. He lands on G because that's the second chord that we're going to go to. He does this over E, and he lands on that G note when the band goes to a G chord. There's also some trills in there. One that he does is between the D and the E notes on the 7th fret to the 9th fret of the G. Okay, and then it finally builds out of this breakdown section into the where do we go now, where do we go? The vocals come in really loud, but there's also a little bit of soloing behind the vocals. So I thought maybe we could take a look at just a few of these parts that stick out here. It starts off like this. We're going to do a big bend on the 22nd fret. The note is D. We're going to bend up to an E. And then he goes into the 17th fret of the high E with these pre-bends. So we're going to bend up before we strike the note. And that's always a really emotional effect if you do that pre-bend several times in a row. and then we're going to the root note E, which is found on the 17th fret of the B string. Okay, so that's the part of this section that sticks out the most, to me anyway, is that big bend on the 22nd fret, back to the 17 with those pre-bends, and then there's some other just bluesy fills. You can fill it up with notes from the E minor pentatonic scale or the E minor scale. One fill that I thought was pretty nice, he does this lick, 12 on the high E, 15 to 12 on the B, 14 on the G. And he plays it a whole bunch of times really fast. So it's going to be a pull-off on the B string here. You can just kind of go crazy, have a little bit of fun with that. The part that's important to catch is at the end of this, we're going to have this phrase where the whole band plays together. And this is going right down the E blues scale. So we're on the note E, which is found on the 17th fret of the B string, 15 B, 16, 15, 14 G, now we're going to land 12 on the G and the root note E, 14th fret of the D string. Okay, that's important to catch that if you're doing the soloing. Okay, and then he continues a little bit with more pre-bends on the 14th fret of the G string. And then finally we have the ending phrase, which sounds like this. Okay, so this is going to be 14 on the D. Strike that and slide down to the 9 on the same D string. Strike the 9, go back to 5 on the D. Now go to the A string, hit the 10th fret, slide back to the 7th. Slide back to the 2nd. And then we're going to slide into the 5th fret of the E string. Slide back to the 3rd fret of the E string. Pull off to the open E. So once again, here's the whole ending phrase. And there you have Sweet Child of Mine.